This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, we now bring you a discussion on International Day of Forests and Health. The participants are environmentalist Mukul Sanwal and Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR correspondent.
Forests provide directly or indirectly important health benefits for all people, not only those whose lives are closely intertwined with forest ecosystem, but also people far from forest, including urban population. Recognition of the importance of forest for food security and nutrition has significantly increased in recent years. And today, to discuss on this regard, on the occasion of International Day of Forests in detail, we are joined by environmentalist Mukul Sanwal. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you.
So the theme of this year's International Day of Forest for 2023 is Forests and Health. What is the significance of this year's theme?
See, the link between forest and health is long-standing. Our entire civilization has been built on this link. Human life evolved from the forest, and human life is sustained because of the forest, because these forests provide not only nutrition and medicines, as you have said, but they also moderate the rainfall and prevent it from seeping down to the seas. The ground absorbs moisture, rainfall, water because of the roots. So they are linked with our lives, and as we move into the urban areas, into cities, the water that has been conserved by forests gradually seeps down through rivers and rivulets and can be used for drinking water in the cities. If it was not for the forests, there would not be any life as we can see in the desert areas. So that is the significance, and it is just not for the kind of daily life that we see, but also for the level of civilization, because they provide medicines, they provide food, they provide nutrition, recreation, and this balance of biological and human diversity is what creates civilization, what is called ecosystem, and sustains life on this planet.
Mr. Sanwal, India's forest cover has increased by 20,000 kilometers in the last 8 years, and even Prime Minister Modi mentioned about this feat in his last year's speech on Environment Day. So India is among few countries in the world where forest cover is consistently increasing. Mr. Sanwal, how are you seeing India's effort?
You see, there are two aspects to this too of forest conservation. One is conservation of forests in forested areas. That is what world over people are doing. And we are also doing that because we have stopped logging. There is a ban on logging. These areas are under strict watch, and that forest cover is increasing. But what is new and what the Prime Minister has emphasized through urban forests is something different, which also goes back to our civilization when ancient kings, the kings that we remember, planted trees along the roads to provide shade to the travelers, forest, animal life, fruits, etc. His emphasis on urban forest is that you cannot just build cities in the way the developed countries have been building cities, basically roads, parking lots, and concrete buildings. Very few parks, open spaces or trees. Now, his emphasis that he will also monitor urban forests or the trees plantation and their survival in urban areas, I think is revolutionary. And to the best of my knowledge, this kind of program or this kind of thrust does not exist in any other country, and it is showing results. Now we know that when temperature increases with climate change, heat islands develop. It becomes difficult to live in these cities, which are just concrete, built-up areas. We also know that trees bring in birds and other small animal life, which is also necessary for a healthy life. And he has insisted that this be monitored through satellites and checked and publicized so that there can be feedback. And the most important point that he has picked up is that against what was happening in the past in our country is that it is not the tree plantation that is important, it is the survival that is more important. And I think in combination, these two will change our cities, and we will realize the importance of what Prime Minister Modi has now emphasized 20, 30 years later.
Mr. Sanwal, urban and peri-urban forests provide green space for exercise and recreation and assist in recovery from the stress of urban life, as we know. How growing and maintaining forests in and near urban areas will help buffer noise, reduce the urban heat island effect?
See, you need to see this as part of a holistic idea of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Modi is also emphasizing yoga. Yoga has also been declared by the United Nations as something that is important for the world. Now, yoga itself means some kind of connection with nature, You go out in the parks under the shade of a tree to practice asanas. So when you look at this together, you find that it is not just the effect of climate change or recreation, but our own daily well-being has also been linked by the Prime Minister to forests. Because it is the combination. Forests, plants, greenery, birds, other small animals, and our mental well-being when we practice, or even if we don't practice yoga, when we visit these parks, we spend some time in connection with nature. For those who are living in urban areas, it becomes important. If you see the advertisement for rent in many of our leading newspapers, park-facing apartment is considered to be of higher value than other apartments. If there are trees in the area and there's some photograph, their value is higher. So the urban population appreciates this. It only needs a certain push and again a sustained effort for us to move in that direction where we had always lived in connection with nature, so that we strive in our own way to develop and not just copy the West, because our civilization has been superior and we need to go back to our roots.
And dependency of humans on forest for medicine dates back for at least 5,000 years. So from old times to the modern times, pharma industries' need for raw material are also making forest a crucial asset in terms of direct relation of human health and medicinal need with forests. What's your take on this, Mr. Sawal?
The United Nations has just pointed out that 80% of the drugs in developing countries have their base or origin in forests. This figure is 25% for developed countries. Now in our civilization, Ayurveda, homeopathic, Unani, the entire drug pharmacopoeia was based on forests. Now we have gone back to that. I would again say the link with shade, climate change, yoga, back to give elevating Ayurvedic homeopathic medicines, Unani medicines, to the level of the Western medicines, allopathic medicines. You have now hospitals, you have now a spread of these because they have less toxic effect or no toxic effect, for example, compared with the antibiotics that are prevalent in the West. At the same time, the depletion of forests is leading to more diseases, and the United Nations has found that 60% of diseases have their origin in forests, and 75% of emerging infectious diseases, malaria, even COVID it is said, have origin in forests, animals. And as the forest area decreases, these animals or these infections or organisms, they spread into the cities. So a new situation is emerging on both ends. The extent of forest is critical, and I think that is another realization that we have found of the Prime Minister, that let us not copy the West in whatever they are doing, because we are different. Our situation is different. And this is also an example that we need to look back into our civilization and see how we have evolved. And if we can copy to some extent those lifestyles, that thinking, we will be better off than the Western civilizations.
And Mr. Sawal, with the global challenges that we are facing right now, encroachment of humans into forests and habitat erosion have increased the opportunities for pathogens to jump from wild and domestic animals to people. According to the United Nations, a number of zoonotic diseases such as malaria and dengue fever are connected with increased contact of humans. So how is the encroachment into forests inviting an unseen health emergency?
You see, traditional forests maintain the balance between different life forms, different types of trees. There was the high natural forest. Below them were the ferns or other trees below the canopy. And then you had animals, snails, rabbits, foxes, tigers, deer. A balance was maintained by nature, where the life forms depended on one another, who also depended on these produce of the forest. It could be the meat, it could be the medicines, it could be the fodder. Now once this balance is upset, we do not know what will happen. Let me give you the example of modern science. The person who discovered ozone was given the Nobel Prize. But the world did not know that excessive use of ozone would lead to the ozone hole and a serious global crisis. So in that sense, if we depend on nature, we know that nature has always been at balance, will come to a new balance, and nothing new or drastic will emerge if we maintain that balance of nature. And that is why we find that new research is also indicating, we are not sure yet, but it is indicating that COVID also emerged from animals. They jumped from animals to humans because the forest covers are depleted, and these animals which lived in the wilderness are moving into cities. So we do not know what is going to happen. So the right thing is to maintain that balance of nature, and the primary activity in that is forest cover. And that is what is now being stressed by the Prime Minister, that we have to maintain the natural forest, we have to plant trees that are natural to this country, and we have to make sure that they survive because they are essential for our existence. It is not just for climate change or for water or for noise, but when we look at the combination of all of this, they form part of our existence and future well-being in the widest sense.
And the forest also has a cultural significance that is key to the spiritual health of individuals and communities living in and near forest areas. Indigenous people often associate the well-being of the forest with enhanced collective and community well-being in a large sense, perceiving a link between healthy land and healthy people. So what's your say on this particular aspect, Mr. Sawal?
See, if you look at any city or urban area and you go on a holiday, you see the number of people who are visiting the parks or the forested areas. The more rich, who can afford a transport, are going to nearby forests. The others traveling by bus, even very poor people, are taking their children to the public parks that are prevalent, that are quite extensive in our country, more than in other countries. So you can see that the human population, the average human being in a city, wants to be in contact with nature, particularly the children. So we can see that without them being aware of any scientific benefit they would get, or without their being aware of any other deep philosophical reason, but they find peace and enjoyment in this. Now, when we look at it more scientifically, we find that our traditional scriptures, our traditional paths of well-being have emphasized this even more. The link with nature has been an essential part of existence in our cultures. We have called rivers as Ma. There is a very big difference. It is more life-giving. So similarly, forests have been associated with temples. You will find some trees around temples. They were always there in the past, may have been cut later on, which were quiet, solitude places. Just the noise would be the noise of small birds and animals. And you found that the traditional scriptures were written in such places. Mahatma Gandhi wrote his Anasakti Yoga sitting in a quiet area in the Uttarakhand mountains, forested area. So we have this part of human existence, and I think one can find a number of examples in other cultures also, but more so in our culture, where the association with forests has been an essential part of existence, well-being, mental, physical, and spiritual.
Mr. Sawal, when we talk about this much of significance of forest in our life, what is the way forward and how can we engage the younger generation in this mission to maintain and regrow forests?
See, the point is that the younger generation, and our generation too to some extent, has grown up with Western science, with Western thinking, with Western stories. It is when we come out with our own cultural stories, our own comics, our own books, and our own philosophy in a very simplified manner, that the children will see the significance of forest or nature. It is the same thing. You can call it nature, you can call it forest. And it is when they imbibe this, they see the value when they go out in the park, when they listen to a bird, it will become a part of them. And that, I think, is happening now because of the importance that is being given to urban forests. Because most children, most human beings throughout the world, including India, are going to shift to cities. So if the cities are going to thrive in the future in the kind of way our civilization has thrived in the past, urban forest has to have an important part in that. And I think that is the revolutionary step Prime Minister Modi has taken, which I don't think any other country has taken. And this value or advantage we will find 30 years later. Not only the trees become urban forests in the real sense, but when this generation, which is growing up in this kind of thinking and atmosphere, become adults and become a part of the economy and society.
Absolutely, and this can be done by recognizing that forests are essential for the well-being of all people and creating an enabling environment in which people can benefit from them. Thank you so much, Mr. Sawal, for joining us today on All India Radio.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on International Day of Forests, Forests and Health. The participants were environmentalist Mukul Sawal and Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official.